Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Shadow of Kyoshi chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 16, which is called Weakness. We ended the last chapter with the big cliffhanger. Heiran has just been stabbed by Yoon in the throat. Seemingly the assassination attempt has succeeded. But as we open up this chapter, we see that Heiran still has a bit of fight left in her. She's not going to just be killed by Yoon. She's going to use this as an opening to try and take Yoon out, or at the very least give Kyoshi an opportunity to go after Yoon. So she, in her sort of final act of strength, she's convinced she's going to die here. She's going to sacrifice herself so Kyoshi can go after Yoon. Death grip on his hand, and she, with her other hand, big firebending ball, goes to deliver a devastating blow against Yoon. He manages to sort of avoid it in terms of it being a lethal blow, and just takes a pretty bad wound to the shoulder from the fire blast. But Yoon is now injured, so he decides to flee, which fits with his attitude from before in the fight with Glowworm, that if he had an important sort of body part injured, that he would tactically work around it. So he's not going to stay to potentially fight Kyoshi with an arm basically down. So he makes the decision here to leave, and Kyoshi is now left with the choice. Does she go after Yoon and go ahead with the plan she had more or less agreed to with Heiran, or stay and try and save Heiran, who is sort of bleeding out basically? She makes the decision to stay and save Heiran, even though Heiran is like, go after him. No, don't do this, Kyoshi. And what I love about this is that there's always in the back of your head the idea of that this is a valid excuse, but she's still using this as an excuse, as a reason to not go after Yoon, attack him, or treat him like the criminal that he is being right now. You forgive her this time, but given her attitude in general towards Yoon over the course of the book, she's being sort of overly defensive, and she's almost like afraid to actually fight Yoon. She doesn't want to believe that it will come to a situation where she has to go after him and treat him as the next Zhu Ping On. But his actions are proving that you might have to do that. So that's the thing behind the scenes here. Like, of course, save Heiran, but there's more to this. So they needed a miracle to save Heiran. One who was currently on the other side of town, referring to Ottawa, of course, already referred to as a miracle worker by Heiran, and that's who Kyoshi needs to get her to now to save her. So we cut to a new scene, and very quickly they kind of establish Kyoshi gets Heiran there to safety. Ottawa is working on Heiran, and without too many paragraphs passing, we find out that Heiran is going to be okay. It's going to take a while to recover her from the injury, her throat. She's not going to be able to speak for a while, so she has to write via chalk. But before we get to that, there's a few things that happen here. Kyoshi has a quick talk with Nyatha. They reveal that the fighting has calmed down, but they get to the situation of, this is what the beginnings of wars in the Fire Nation look like. I don't know if we're going to be able to just talk this out and stop it. So the question is, how much time do they have left before this becomes a full-on war between clans? And Nyatha is just like, a few days. If you have a plan, it better be simple and quick. So key period of time coming up. What moves are Kyoshi going to make to try and stop this? What can she do to stop this? But it's also forcing her hand. She's going to have to act immediately. And given that she doesn't know the full situation, is she going to act rashly or not? So that's the situation. Ottawa comes down, reveals Heiran's going to be okay. Rangi is up there with Heiran, of course. But she points out she's absolutely livid with you. And Kyoshi's like, which one? Of course, which is kind of funny. Both. I would not want to be you right now. And Kyoshi goes upstairs to confront mother and daughter, who are both furious with her for what happened. Rangi, of course, for Kyoshi being involved in more or less assisting her mother to like sacrifice herself. And then Heiran is of course upset with Kyoshi because she didn't go ahead and pursue Yoon. And I suppose Rangi has already revealed that she's kind of frustrated with Kyoshi for also not being able to just treat Yoon as a criminal like he's being. So, valid reasons, I think, to be annoyed at Kyoshi, but you can also see the conflict on Kyoshi's side of things. as she points out when the discussion happens here. You used my mother as bait. I didn't agree to the plan. And Rangi's response here is quite nice. Right, you just went along. Neutral Jing, huh? You kept quiet and you didn't tell me she meant to sacrifice herself. Would you have mentioned it over her corpse? Would you have told me then? And Kyoshi can only attempt to apologize to this because she's realizing that in not acting or making a decision really with Heiran, she was more or less agreeing to it, and that's not much of an excuse because, as we've seen with Rangi earlier on in the book, and the idea of like, I nearly told you to leave your chainmail armor behind. You would have been killed in the first incident with Yoon. It's a very similar type of thing here, of just these not making a decision, like what could have been if a situation went this way or not. That Kyoshi didn't realize when she didn't make the decision what might have happened, and it's very interesting to consider just how this all works together, and yeah, so yeah, this is where we get what seems to be the breakup between the two of them, because Rangi is furious at what's happened here, and such a big breach of trust against Rangi here with Kyoshi. There's no need to apologize, because from this point on, I am nothing to you. Do you hear me, Avatar Kyoshi? Nothing. And she runs straight down the stairs. So, she notes that, like, she called me Avatar Kyoshi. She took out the sort of personal touch of her always referring to me just as Kyoshi, but she's very businesslike in that, and just referring to her as nothing, which has a little bit more significance given what Rangi mentioned about her clan, and the fact that, like, if we're not the best at what we do, we're nothing. So there's a significance to Rangi using the word nothing as well. But yeah, this has a big impact on Kyoshi. The way it's described here, Kyoshi really believes Rangi has just broken up with her, left her, that she'll never be able to be close to her again, basically. Kyoshi's body began to heave. She took great dry gulps, her insides twisting. She couldn't breathe. She didn't want to. This wasn't a future she could face. She was imprisoned again. But this is when Heiran just throws a bit of chalk at her, and it's revealed, of course, that Heiran has to communicate via writing chalk on a board. And she says, "Stop panicking. She's not leaving you." And Kyoshi's like, but what she said. And Heiran's like, Heiran rolls her eyes as she's seeing sort of like teen romance drama in front of her, but she's just like, okay, calm down, please. She says a lot of things. Yes, she's angry with you. It doesn't mean she'll walk away forever. How do you know? She's my daughter. You think you know her well? I've known her since she was born. Eventually, she will come back with some sign she still cares. It usually takes her a week to forgive me. Give it time. So, and Kyoshi's still thinking, like, what if you're wrong? What if that only applies to you and her forgiving you? We don't know that applies to me, does it? So they change topics temporarily. Yoon, what's going on with him? Kyoshi says she searched the town with the help of some of the locals who were reasonable, but he's gone. He might still be on the island, but they really don't have a clue. He just completely got away. So the question is, you missed your opportunity. Why did you go against the plan that we had agreed to? And Kyoshi's response here makes sense. I couldn't leave you to die. For Rangi's sake, I couldn't. But they quickly get down to the core of things here. Yoon isn't the only thing driving us to war anymore. The Sawan and the Kyoso will use today as a just cause to fight. They'll both say they were defending their honor. So that's where Kyoshi gets to thinking. So she says here, to help the process along, she reached out with her earthbending, applying the gentlest force against Heiran's board. At the touch of her bending, the mineral chalk swept clean off the slate. With Kyoshi's level of control, that was the best she could manage. So Kyoshi reveals that she doesn't have the best control, but she can at least wipe a board clean of the chalk that's on it, revealing chalk bending as being a thing. And this is where something lights up in Kyoshi's head of like, what earthbender does have such amazing control over earth in its like mineral tiny form? Yoon, with the paintings. And then Yoon, that's like his special skill as an earthbender, is his amazing control over it. how else could such a detailed message have been written in a field of melon yams? How could, you know, crops have been poisoned in such a way where a message has been written? So she is like, Yoon is working on behalf of the Sowon. They're abetting him in the Fire Nation in return for his service. And Heiron doesn't make the connections at all just yet. And Kyoshi just points out, everything he's done is strengthened the Sowon position and weakened Zoryu's. The humiliation at the party from before, the melon yams, the fields, the message in the hillside, as it's called here. And Heiron's just like, wait, what? I don't follow you in the crop riding. But if you're correct, then this would change the dynamic here. This would turn the Sowon into traitors, and it would turn it from being more of a battle of clans for honor, and immediately the Sowon will be seen as being the sort of dishonorable ones here. And they would have to submit to justice if they were found out. The other clans respect strength and cunning, but they couldn't possibly forgive inviting a foreign attack on the Fire Nation. So that if they can prove that the Sowon hired Yoon basically to do what he's done here, they're done. So it's like, would they take that risk? Is Kyoshi reaching here, or is she completely on the money with this? Right now, it's only a hunch, but I have to follow up on a few things to confirm it. So the main thing she needs to confirm is her suggestion that Yoon is the one behind the message in the melon yams correct? And it obviously relates to control over Earth in its mineral form. So we'll get to that. But just as she finishes that sentence, Rangi just storms into the room, slams a bowl of food right at Kyoshi into her hands, throws some chopsticks on the floor, and is just like, you haven't eaten since yesterday afternoon, and just immediately leaves. And Kyoshi's just left being like, what just happened? And Heiron is like, oh, see, even faster than they thought. You mean everything to her, Kyoshi. That what takes usually Rangi a week to forgive her mother, it's taken a handful of minutes in Kyoshi's case. And you can tell Heiron's just kind of like, oh, impressive. Like, you got a response even quicker. That shows how much she cares for you. And then the next line is really good. All the, Kyogi or Rangshi shippers, this is a great line. My daughter loves you, which means you are also my daughter. For better or worse, you are part of the family. Now go on before your food gets cold. You need your strength. And so Kyoshi leans down to eat. They were the best thing she'd ever tasted. Tears ran down Kyoshi's face as she ate her meal. The other detail to this is that Kyoshi realizes that, oh, there's no fuel in the kitchen, meaning that Rangi had to have cooked the noodles that she's just handed Kyoshi using her own firebending. So she's put in a lot of effort to give this food to Kyoshi. So it is truly a show of like a lot of care here. So I really like that. Just a bit of like valid drama between the two. Of course, they have to discuss the fact that you assisted in basically, trying to get my mother killed, using her as bait, assisting in her attempt to sacrifice herself. That's not right. And so Kyoshi has to realize the error of that here. But we have the sort of plan going forward. What is Kyoshi going to do? She has to act. She has to act within the next couple of days, or the Fire Nation really is going to kick off into war. So the question is with Kyoshi always, this plan that she has and her theory on Yoon's involvement, has she fully thought it through, or is this just her connecting the dots and going in the wrong direction? And now that she's going to act, is she going to be, is this going to work in her favor or against her going forward? So that's the fun setup going forward. Is things are getting heavy here. She's going to have to make some sort of political maneuvers, some bigger moves. How will it go? But yeah, I really like this. The Rangi Kyoshi dynamic is really, really well done throughout the entire book. And then, yeah, there's just the setup for further escalation between the clans. And of course, Heiron survives as well, but with this lingering sort of throat injury. Like I said at the end of the last chapter, I think the only problem I have with that is that it's perhaps a slightly unnecessary death fake out, given that they did the same thing with her in the first book. nearly killing her with the poisoning, which is why the whole setup for Heiran at the start of this book is a thing. I think they maybe could have reworked that just a little bit so that it doesn't seem maybe as repetitive in some ways. But I also do really like the sort of dedication from Heiran to try and take Yoon out. That she is close to him. In the past, she sort of has viewed him to a degree as also being one of her own children. I think she mentions that at one point, or Jeonju I think maybe mentions that. That's just the way Heiran is. She's tough on people when she trains them, but it's because she cares. And the fact that she is willing to do what Kyoshi isn't. The fact that Rangi is almost kind of at the point where she's willing to fight against Yoon as well, but Kyoshi's the holdout, is a very interesting dynamic. What is finally going to be the thing that fully convinces Kyoshi that Yoon is someone who she needs to deal with in the same way she dealt with Zhu? But yeah, they're my thoughts on this chapter, Weakness. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this one, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.